A pleasant afternoon, everyone. For today's discussion, our topic is about the competency framework for teachers in Southeast Asia CFTC. For the learning outcomes of this lesson, we will learn how to relate the competency framework for teachers in Southeast Asia CFTC to teacher quality. Second, discuss the Philippine Professional Standard for Teachers PPST, Career Stage 1, Beginning Teacher Competency and how it can assure teacher quality in the Philippines.
Okay. So at this point, we will be talking about CFT. It was developed in 2017 with its purpose revitalize teacher education and to promote teaching as a profession of first choice by professionalizing teachers pre-service and in-service development. Now, in CFT, we are talking about here competency. Now, what do we really mean by competencies? Competency competence that this is the word that we can this is the word that we hear a lot of times. So competencies just means combination of skills, knowledge, behavior, and attributes that enable effective or superior job performance. Now, it is important for us to remember that competencies are not the same in all areas. Some competencies differ per job, per work, or by per profession. There are certain competencies for electrician, or let's say for engineers, for doctors, for chefs, for entrepreneur, and some other profession. Now, how about for the teachers? What is the competency framework for the teachers? The CFT serves as a guide to improve a teacher's performance. Now, just as what we all know, being a professional teacher means you are having competence. Being a teacher means you have competence and you are, of course, subject to the code of ethics. And as what we have discussed last midterms, teaching is an endless task. Teaching is an endless learning. So we need guidance such as the CFT for furthering, for improving our professional growth. We have here the four essential competencies under the CFT. So the first one is knowing and understanding what to teach. This just means that we will be going to deepen and broaden the knowledge. Just like what I have said earlier, learning is endless for teachers. Learning is an endless task for professional teachers. It just means that a teacher needs to uplift and upgrade his or her professional growth because you cannot give what you do not have. Likewise, if you do not have enough knowledge or if you yourself could not even understand what you need to teach, you will not be able to share it properly. You will not be able to share it accordingly, effectively, and accurately. Teachers understand the education trend, what is currently trending in the education world, okay, about the policies and the curriculum as well. Teachers must be updated at all times, especially in this generation, in this 21st century. Teachers should all be updated about what is happening on the local community, the regional community, the national community, and even the international. Because again, the goal is to become a globally competitive teacher. Diba? Educators that are always prepared and ready to go along globalization. Okay. For the second one, we have here helping students to learn. Okay. Of course, you already know this. Teachers are the facilitators of learning. This just means that you need to explore different teaching methods, explore different kinds of teaching strategies. You do not need to stick only to one strategy. You need to explore them, experiment on them, and find what best suits you and your learners. What is the method that is the most comfortable, the most appropriate method for you and for the learners as well. Teachers are not just standing there in front of the classroom or We say in the virtual setup, teachers are not there just to talk and talk without giving regard to the students. Okay, with the teachers need to make sure that they help their students and guide them. Again, teachers bridge the gap. Po. Next, third, says here engaging the community. This talks about now partnership. If you can remember our lesson last midterms, diba? The teacher and the parent, and the other one is the teacher and the community. Also, the three C's na needed for the teacher-parent relationship. If you can remember what we have tackled back then, it talks about communication, which is very vital between teachers, guardians, or parents, because they will be talking about the students' proficiency and, of course, the deficiencies as well. Next is consistency. Diba? This is very important. And last is the collaboration, where they cooperate and work together to improve. Po. This competency of the CFT Southeast Asia talks about you as a teacher that can adapt to different environment. You can easily adapt to no matter what environment you are belong to. Your job does not end with teacher-student relationship. Your profession is not limited inside the classroom only. As an educator, you need to develop healthy relationship with the parents and with the guardians to discuss yun nga, the proficiency and deficiency of the student. And as a teacher, no, engaging the community, it means that you are expected to work with the community as well. It means you appreciate cultural diversity, or we call the classroom diversity, and you are tasked to encourage leadership. You cannot uh, you cannot you cannot engage your students to your community if you do not appreciate diversity. You connect community, you connect community with your students, and vice versa, you connect your students to the community. So in that way, your students learn while appreciating their community. Is that clear? All right. So this is the last competency, the fourth one. It talks about becoming a better teacher every day. This is self-explanatory, because if you can remember again our discussion during midterms, the article, the teacher as a person. Teacher is the teachers are always with the words dignity and honor, because teachers need to live with dignified personality every time. This is not being selfish. You are improving together with other people, and you are subject to the code of ethics. It is the highest obligation of the teachers to behave as a role model every time, everywhere, and every day. Okay, teachers need to nurture their skills and develop them. Now, how about in times when a teacher makes mistakes? Uh, Mistake is normal. Mistake is a part of your work. Mistake is a part of your life, and mistake is a part of you that you could never erase, you could never delete, it will never disappear. Now, the only thing that you need to do as a teacher is to assess yourself. What can you do to improve your teaching methods? What can you do to engage more students in learning? What could you possibly do to make learning fun and easy? And what can you do to leave an impact? Okay? It is by becoming better every day for yourself and for the learners as well. Now, as a teacher seeking for improvement, you just need to tell yourself that today I should do better than yesterday.
Now we will talk about the 12 competencies and the corresponding 31 enabling competencies. First, we will talk about the know and understand what I teach. General competencies. Number 1. Deepen and broaden my knowledge on what I learn. Its corresponding competencies is to master my subject content,
and use research-based knowledge. Number two, in general competencies, is to understand educational trends, policies, and curricula. Its corresponding enabling competencies is to always update myself on educational trends, study educational policies and how they affect teaching, and last, understand how to implement the curriculum. Number three, in general competencies, is to keep myself updated on local, national, regional, and global developments. Its corresponding enabling competencies is to check new changes in education environment. Second, we will talk about help my students learn. So first, number one, on general competencies is I know my students. Its corresponding enabling competencies is RAD or R, identify my students' needs and strength to help them learn better, understand how my students learn, and value what makes my students unique. Number two, on general competencies, is to use the most effective teaching and learning strategy. Its corresponding enabling competencies are selecting appropriate learning and teaching strategy, design clear and effective lesson my students can understand, and create a positive and caring learning space. Number three, on general competencies, is to assess and give feedback on how my students learn. Its corresponding enabling competencies are design assessment process and tools and monitor my students' progress and provide appropriate support. Now let's move on to the third one, which is to engage in the community. So number one on general competencies is partner with parents and caregiver. Its corresponding enabling competencies are build a support network, create welcoming space, and sustain the partnership. Number two, involve the community to help my students learn. Its corresponding enabling competencies is to engage parents and caregivers about their children, design learning activities using community conditions, local wisdom, tradition, and knowledge. Number three, in general competencies is to encourage respect and diversity. Its corresponding enabling competencies is to always accept what makes people different and practice inclusion and respect in the classroom. Now let's go to the last one, which is become a better teacher every day. Number one on general competencies is to know myself and others. Its corresponding enabling competencies are continue to grow knowing oneself more, become more aware and responsible for my emotion and health, and nurture my relationship with care and respect. Number two, on general competencies is to practice human goodness in my life and in my work, and its corresponding enabling competencies is to always be kind and compassionate, inspire my students and colleagues by setting my best example, nurture my students' confidence on what they can do and become. Number three, lastly, master my practice or my teaching practice. Its corresponding enabling competencies is to always keep alive my passion for teaching, take responsibility in my own personal and professional growth, and lastly, inspire others by setting my best example as a teacher.
Our next lesson is entitled Philippine Professional Standards for Teachers, or PPST.
Philippines Professional Standard for Teachers or PPST. So Philippine teacher education is defined as a lifelong journey from entry to basic education in the DepEd to entry to teacher education institutions of the CHED to licensing as professional teachers of the PRC to employment to DepEd with attestation of the civil service or private basic education. So the Philippine Professional Standard for Teachers, which is built on NCBTS or National Competency-Based Teacher Standards complements the reform initiatives on teachers' quality from pre-service education to in-service training. Professional teacher education provides a qualification for teaching. It is committed to supporting teachers and taking cognizance of unequivocal evidence that good teachers are vital to raising students' achievement. Facilitating learning is a challenging yet rewarding career choice for professionals from different fields of expertise. Professional development may be formal as well as informal, but it is the teacher, him or herself, who has to take the initiative. So in both public and private education, a newly recruited teacher undergoes a teacher induction program or TIP led by the Teacher Education Council or TEC, and private institutions are assisted by the Private Educational Assistance Council or the PEAC. While in service, the professional teacher continues professional development through training by the duly authorized service providers of the PRC or shall continue professional development through advancement in education, master's or doctorate, or other activities on their own. So the continuing professional development continues until the person retires from employment or continues to practice the profession in another capacity. So if you are a newly recruited teacher, there are some processes that you need to take in order to be a professional teacher. In the middle of this professional lifelong cycle are the professional teacher standards known before as the National Competency-Based Teacher Standards or NCBTS on 2006 and now known as the Philippines Professional Standard for Teachers or PPST 2017 DepEd Order 42 Series 2017. So both are frameworks for teacher quality, and the PPST 2017 defined that teacher quality in a broader perspective is attuned to the current demands and changes in the educational local and global landscape to include the reforms of the K-12. So the outcome-based education of higher education, the ASEAN integration and the UNESCO's SDG 2030 and the Mission Natin 2040. So teacher quality matters. In fact, it is the most important school-related factor influencing student achievements. Being responsible for the pre-service development of teachers, teacher education institutions have a responsibility of graduating students with PQF6 qualifications or Philippine Qualification Framework and to master the PPST beginning teacher standards as well as the program outcomes of the CHED's PSG for Teachers Education. CMO or CHED Memorandum Order 72-82 Series 2017. The mastery of the beginning teacher competencies is an expectation of the teaching industry in basic education. So the Philippine Professional Standards for Teacher defines teacher quality in the Philippines. The standards describe the expectation of teachers increasing levels of knowledge, practice, and professional engagement. At the same time, the standards allow for teachers' growing understanding applied with increasing sophistication across a broader and more complex range of teaching learning situations.
Greetings everyone, I am Juvilin C. Salugsugan and I am here to discuss the first two out of the 7 domains of the PPST or the Philippine Professional Standards for Teachers. But first, before proceeding to the actual discussion, why should teachers and future teachers follow the PPST standards? What do we gain from following the PPST standards? Well, by doing so, it helps teachers and us, future teachers, to become a quality teachers. And what do we mean by quality teachers? Quality teachers are competent teachers with global competencies able to demonstrate knowledge, skills, values, and disposition. Quality teachers are local teachers, which is the combination of globally competitive and globally comparative and local teacher. Meaning, these teachers are able to conceptualize global context into local context. Also, Global teachers are teachers who think and act both globally and locally with worldwide perspectives, but teaching in communities or localities where he is situated. Now moving forward, as you can see on the screen, there are 7 domains of the PPST or Philippine Professional Standards for Teachers. It is comprised of 37 strands to refer to more specific dimensions of teacher practice. For each strand, it is calibrated according to the professional development scale of career stage. For career stage level 1, for beginning teachers; career stage level 2, proficient teachers; career stage level 3, highly proficient teachers; and for career stage 4, distinguished teachers. These 7 domains of the PPST are the domains that teachers and future teachers should be aware of and should practice to be considered not only as an efficient teacher, but also as a quality teacher.
Now, let us focus on the PPST 2017, particularly on the beginning teachers' competencies for career stage level 1. Newly qualified to teach as professional teachers are the beginning teachers. They have acquired an appropriate degree in education or allied fields and have passed the licensure examination for professional teachers. They are assumed to have competencies in terms of content, knowledge, and pedagogy, as well as the 21st century skills and values to support teaching and learning. They can manage learning and strategies that enable learners to enhance learning through their guidance. This career stage level is for what we call beginning teachers, and those beginning teachers are the newly qualified teachers who pass the licensure examination for professional teachers and have an appropriate degree in education or allied fields. And when we say allied fields, those are the courses who require their students to have a teaching experience before they graduate. And of course, in the modern times, since change is constant, teachers are expected also to adapt to the learning environment. Since there are so many developed technologies, teachers should have basic knowledge, or better, if they have an advanced knowledge about technology, so that they could bring a better learning outcomes from the learners. However, since the beginning teachers are new to the teaching profession, they are expected to seek advice and guidance from their peers and experienced colleagues to continuously improve their teaching. The first of the 7 domains of the PPST is the content knowledge and pedagogy. When we say pedagogy, it talks about the heart of the teaching. It is those of the methods and practices of teaching in academic subject or theoretical concept. The first strand of the first domain is the content knowledge and its application within and across curriculum areas. It talks about the teacher is able to demonstrate content knowledge and its application within and or across curriculum teaching areas. Meaning to say, it is not enough that you know the content of your lesson. It is also important that you have the understanding of your content. For example, you are a math teacher and you are teaching your students about the algebra. For you to be able to show your students that you have the mastery of the content, you have you have to demonstrate them how the algebra is helpful, or how the algebra is used in the conversion of the dollar peso exchange rate in the study of economics. As you can see, there is a connection between your content into the another subject. And another example, as you can see in our K to 12 curriculum, um, as year as the grade level rises, the context of the content deepens. For example, what was taught in elementary, in high school, and in senior high school. For example, in English, in elementary, we were taught about what is verb, what is noun, what is proverbs, what is pronoun, what is adjectives, and etc. However, in high school, we were taught about how to use those into a correct grammar. We were taught about how to construct a grammatically correct sentence. In in addition, when we come into senior high school, those previous knowledge that we have acquired in our previous grade levels were used or applied in writing written works. For example, those knowledge we have gained in how to construct a grammatically correct sentence were used in writing an essay. For example, argumentative essay, informative essay, persuasive essay, and etc. For the next strand, research-based knowledge and principles of teaching and learning, wherein teachers demonstrate an understanding of research-based knowledge and principles of teaching and learning. So as a teacher, it is vital that you have knowledge and the understanding of the theories that was taught in EDUC 60, which is the child and adolescent learners and learning principles, which could be helpful in developing appropriate approach in a classroom environment. For example, when a teacher know how to approach her students, she could easily come up with an approach or a strategy so that he or she could reach out to them. And when the teacher and the student have a connection, it is easier, or the learning outcomes would be better. On the third standards of the first domain is the positive use of ICT. It shows the skills in the positive use of ICT to facilitate the teaching literacy and numeracy. It demonstrates the knowledge of teaching strategies that promote literacy and numeracy skills. Example of those are when in elementary. Our elementary teachers tend to make us memorize the multiplication table. Like we were told to recite in front of the class and recite the multiplication table, right? And another example in elementary is when our teachers make reading as a group as a daily routine. Like they use that as a medium for their students to learn effectively how to read as a group. And for another example, in high school and in senior high school, our science professors would tend to make us memorize the periodic table of elements and other mathematical formulas, so that when exams came, when exam came, it is easier for us to solve mathematical problems or scientific problems. Next, the fifth strand for the first domain is strategies of developing critical and creative thinking, as well as other higher order skills. It applies teaching strategies that develop critical and creative thinking and or other higher order thinking skills. As a teacher, the thinking of the child must be your first priority. And instead of focusing in memorization, you have to give them situational problems, so that the child could evaluate so that the child could analyze, synthesize, and evaluate the given situation. And by doing so, the metacognitive skills and and the higher order skills, such as the creative and the critical thinking of the child, can be surely developed and enhanced. For the six strands of the first domain, mother tongue, Filipino, and English in teaching and learning. It is the use of mother tongue, Filipino, and English to facilitate teaching and learning. A lot of um, old people, or those people from our past generation, thought that why should mother tongue be taught in schools? Like English is the universal language, right? So as early as possible, our child should be taught about English. But no, it does not happen that way, because a child thinks mentally first before he could speak openly, before he could voice out his ideas. For example, now,
I am thinking in my mother tongue, which is Filipino. I am thinking in Filipino before I shift to speaking in English. That is the importance of the study of the mother tongue, Filipino and English. You cannot communicate well if you do not know or if you do not understand your mother tongue first. And it is also important in learning and communicating. The seventh strand for the first domain is the classroom communication strategies. It demonstrates an understanding of the rate of verbal and nonverbal classroom communication strategies that support learning, understanding, participation, engagement, and activities. So, for the last strand, it is important to have a communication in the classroom environment. A communication has a sender, um, a receiver, and the feedback. It should, when the communication is properly practiced, or if the communication has a feedback, a teacher, a student listens as students listen to their teachers, and at the same time, teachers listen to their students, able to have an efficient, effective, and a proper communication. When that was followed, students would feel that they are welcomed in the classroom environment, and it will result for students to participate and engage in the class discussion.
Is the learning environment. And when we say learning environment, it is connected to behavioral psychology, or also known as behaviorism by John B. Watson. And when we say behaviorism, it is the idea that a child's all behaviors are learned through interaction with the environment, and each strand in this second domain are interconnected with one another. The first strand is the learner's safety and security. It demonstrates knowledge of policies, guidelines, and procedures that provide safe and secure learning environments. As we recall our past experiences, every first day of school, teachers always explains to us. Teachers tell and always explain to us the policies, guidelines, and procedures inside the classroom. They are the rules and regulations that the students have to follow inside the classroom in able to provide a safe and secure learning environment. The next strand would be the fair learning environment, wherein the teachers demonstrate understanding of learning environments that promote fairness, respect, and care to encourage learning. Uh, in this particular strand, it is where the reinforcement is. It is where the reinforcement happens. Meaning to say, there are rules and regulations, as what I have said earlier, and among those rules and regulations, the students' actions, depending on their actions, have to face their consequences depending on their action that they have done. For example, the student who did not pass his or her homework have to face a punishment. And a student who passed his or her homework on time should have a reward. For example, the teacher could give him or her a token, or he or she could have a plus grade in a quiz or a chips that it at the end of the semester or at the end of the grading should be converted into plus points. Next would be the third standard. The third strand is the management of classroom structure and activities. It demonstrates the knowledge of managing classroom structure that engages learners individually or in groups in meaningful exploration, discovery, and hands-on activities within the available physical learning. In this management of classroom structure and activities, the teachers are expected to provide activities, whether it be individually or by group. those activities should be, of course, implemented with the help of reinforcement. For example, um, in college, teachers require their students to have a demo teaching, and depending on the group's performance, they will have either a positive or a negative outcome, or rather they will have a positive, or they will have a punishment, or um or a reward. For example, if the group presented well and they are prepared, they have presented the mastery of the knowledge of the content of their lesson to be tackled about, they will receive a reward. The reward could be a compliment from their teacher and a high grade, of course. And however, if the group did a poor performance, they will have, of course, a punishment, which could be a nagging or scolding from the teacher, and a low score for their performance. Next, for the fourth strand of the second domain, it is the support for learner participation. It demonstrates understanding of supportive learning environments that nurture and inspire learning inspiration. Of course, as a teacher, it is expected of you to create an environment wherein the students feel encouraged enough to participate and engage in the class discussion. And how could you do that?
Domain number 3, diversity of learners, strands 3.1, learners' gender needs, strengths, interests, and experiences. Competency indicators for beginning teachers demonstrate knowledge and understanding of differentiated teaching to suit the learner's genders, needs, strengths, interests, and experiences. In this part tells about creating and acquiring teaching methods that suit for behaving differences of the students. 3.2 under strands, learners' linguistic, cultural, socioeconomic, and religious backgrounds. Competency indicators for beginning teachers. Implement teaching strategies that are responsive to the learner's linguistic, cultural, socioeconomic, and religious background. In this part, it tells of using different strategies that learners can be easily to respond. 3.3 learners with disabilities, giftedness, and talents. Use strategies responsive to learners with disabilities, giftedness, and talent. In this part, may test the strategies that suit for those persons with disabilities. 3.4 learners in difficult circumstances demonstrate understanding of the special educational needs of learners in difficult circumstances, including geographic isolation, chronic illness, displacement due to armed conflict, urban resettlement or disasters, child abuse, and child labor practices. In this part, must require better presentation on delivering the lesson topic or with special needs. 3.5 learners from indigenous groups demonstrate knowledge of teaching strategies that are inclusive of learners from indigenous people. In this part, making demonstration that is easy to pick up and learn by indigenous people. Domain number 4, curriculum and planning, strands, planning and management of teaching and learning process. Prepare development sequences, teaching and learning process to meet curriculum requirements. In this part, preparing teaching methods to meet the curriculum requirements. Follow the curriculum requirements must be applied by learning of the student. Learning outcomes aligned with learning competencies. Identify learning outcomes that are aligned with learning competencies. In this part, align your teaching in learning competencies. 4.3 relevance and responsive of learning progress. Demonstrate knowledge in the implementation of relevant and responsive learning programs. In this part, the part tells that your teaching method is responsive by the learners. This can easily to be responsive by the learners. 4.4 professional collaboration to enrich teaching practice. Seek advice concerning strategies that can enrich teaching practices. So in this part, seeking advice for gaining more different ideas on teaching that help you to improve not only will benefit for you but also will benefit to the student so that they can easily understood of the lesson or the topic that you have represented. 4.5 Teaching and Learning Resources including ICT. Show skills in the selections, development, and use of variety of teaching and learning outcomes, including ICT to address learning goals. In this part, use different type of materials in teaching to address learning goals, especially in ICT. So using different kinds of materials in delivering your presentation or your lesson must be caught the attention of the student. Domain number 5, Assessment and Reporting, Strands 5.1, Design, Selection, Organization, and Utilization of Assessment Strategies. 5.1, Demonstrate knowledge of design, selection, organization, and use of the diagnostic, formative, and summative assessment strategies consistent with curriculum requirements. In this part, being imaginative and making assessment that not only meet curriculum requirements but also the student attentions. 5.2, Monitoring and Evaluation of Learning Progress and Achievement. Demonstrate knowledge of monitoring and evaluation of learning progress and achievement using attained data. Learning progress must have been based on what the learners gain throughout the quarter. So always based of giving a data on the learners what he gained throughout the day, throughout the time that he attend all the classes. 5.3 Feedback to improve learning. Demonstrate knowledge of providing timely, accurate, and constructive feedback to improve learner performance. Creating a accurate feedback for your student to help him or her to improve in her class. 5.4 Communication of learner needs, progress, and achievement to key stakeholders. Demonstrate familiarity with a range of strategies for communicating learners' needs, progress, and achievement. Use every words that can easily understood by the learner so that they don't need time to think of what words that you are using. 5.5 Use of assessment data to enhance teaching and learning practices and programs. Demonstrate an understanding of the role of assessment data as a feedback in teaching and learning practices and program. Instead, by using assessment, you might need to give more progress that you need to improve based on the assessment. Domain number 6, Community linkage and professional engagement. Strand, establishments of learning environments that are responsive to context. Demonstrate an understanding of knowledge of learning environment that are responsive to community context. Establishing teaching that are responsive and has something to do with the environment without disrespecting it or stepping its dignity or its name. Engagement of parents and the wider school community in the educative process. Seek advice concerning strategies that build relationships with parents, guardians, and the wider community. Creating and build good relationships with parents of the learners to have a good relationship not only inside the school but also building a relationship outside the school, or we call it the community. Professional ethics. Demonstrate awareness of existing laws and regulations that apply to the teaching professions. Become familiar with the responsibility specified in the Code of Ethics for Professional Teachers. It tells of being aware of applicable laws as a teacher and keep it in mind at any time. So be professional at any time, no matter where you are or what time it is. School policies and procedures. Demonstrate knowledge and understanding of school policies and procedures to foster harmonious relationship with the wider school community. Being a good follower on inside the school policies and regulations that show respect and build better relationship inside the school. Following the school policy and regulation is a good example for the student that can adapt to you. So they can also follow your rules inside the classroom or outside the classroom. Domain number 7, Personal growth and professional development. Strand, philosophy of teaching. Articulate a philosophy of teaching that is learner-centered. It tells have a philosophy as a teacher that always think learner is centered. Dignity of teaching as a profession. Demonstrate behavior that uphold the dignity of teaching profession by exhibiting qualities such as caring attitude, respect, and integrity. Showing up being professional at any time as possible as you can, as I stated before. Professional linkage with colleagues. I seek opportunities to establish professional links with colleagues. Build professional connection to others for more opportunities to gain advice for better improvement. So, having connection to your colleagues will help you to gain and learn to them new ideas on how you improve yourself as a professional. Professional reflection and learning to improve practice. Demonstrate an understanding of how professional reflection and learning can be used to improve practice. Being professional must need to have a reflection to know what needed to most to improve as a professional. Professional development goals. Demonstrate motivation to realize professional development goals based on the Philippine Professional Standard for Teachers. Have a professional goals not only will benefit for you, but also for Philippine Professional Standard of Teachers. It also not carrying your name, but also carrying the name of the school and carrying the responsible as a professional.